With patch 1.6, ZenlessZoneZero has just released its biggest update to HoloZero with some interesting implications. But worry not, because today I'll be breaking down everything you need to know so that you don't miss any rewards and more. Without further ado though, let's break down first what's changed. First, there is a new story quest to start off the new patch, and it involves dealing with the new boss known as Geppetto. The name of this quest is Reinvestigate the Lost Void, and put simply, it's an introduction to the content, but it is decently short. Once completed, you'll then be prompted with a notification announcing a new challenge for Lost Void, difficulty 6. To be clear, this challenge has the same difficulty multipliers as the previous level, with things like losing the ability to see glows at 9 out of 12 activity effects. That said, the boss is now different, with it now being Geppetto, and there being a whole host of new mechanics associated with him. To add to this, the buffs in this new Lost Void also cater to 3 distinct types of DPS. First, electric DPS, who can also make use of EX special attacks. Second, anomaly agents who, well, just use anomaly proficiency. And third, characters who can at least make use of their EX special attack once every 18 seconds. The idea behind these buffs is that players will have the ability to use any kind of DPS to clear said content, but to be fair, you could argue that a lot of the content from this HoloZero is designed with ambies and more recent DPS like Evelyn's strengths in mind. This is also the case as most of the content otherwise includes Ice Week enemies all over the place, so sorry to you Miyabi lovers, and honestly rest in peace to Ellen enjoyers. However, that said, her new kit and buffs are present in this, so she's actually not too bad. Now let's move on to the kits. Before we go any further, I do want to address something first. Though it is definitely speculation and more of a prediction on my behalf, I'm actually very happy with the fact that Zenless has pushed out these new gear kits, as these could in theory be used for potential buffs for characters in the future. Now, as Honkai Star Rail has already announced that they plan on adjusting or observing old characters' power levels, I believe that these new kits can serve a similar purpose in case old agents become outdated. Of course though, this is all just my speculation and my guessing. With that though, let's now move on to the kits themselves. Alongside these gear kits are their own shadow operator stages like with Ellen, Yanagi, Billy, and Miyabi had, but before I summarize what each kit does briefly, keep in mind that almost every gear kit designed increases the damage of said abilities. With this, here's a quick summary of what the more impactful game-changing kits do, and of course these would be the S ranks. For Jane, Phantom Armor is an S rank gear that increases the duration of her spinning charge-based attack by a lot. This also allows her to perform a perfect dodge if she performs a finishing move and gets attacked while it's happening. Boiling Predatory Instinct is an S rank gear that improves Jane's passion state. This allows her to stay in her enhanced state for longer while also being given free stats too. Not much else to say. Venomous Edge is another gear that affects her passion state, and this affects her EX special. When using it, it will then transform her old special attack into a new aerial sweep form and deals additional damage. To add to this, when using the new attack, Jane will re-enter into the passion state immediately, granting her the enhanced stats she otherwise would have gained if she had stayed in the passion state to begin with. Now moving on to Evelyn's kit, she has 3 kits to choose from with low combustion coating, and this is a gear that decreases the animation length of her chain attack while also increasing the damage it deals. Portable Detonator is another S rank gear that changes her dash attack, but this is only after she leaves the Binding Seal state. This isn't the only thing that changes, however, as Evelyn's kit is also affected so that her basic attack Garrote will also cause her to leave the Binding Seal state. The new skill that she gains, as earlier mentioned, is also considered a chain attack, so this in general is just an overall improvement to her DPS. Ultimate Contingency Protocol is another gear that automatically causes her to trigger a defensive assist when she's staggered by a frontal attack. Furthermore, this also causes her to cast her alternate assist follow-up attack, Chorus Disruption, while increasing her crit damage too. Next, let's move on to Corrin. Chainsaw Operation Manual is an S rank gear that replaces Corrin's dash attack with a new and improved speedy version that lasts until it has slashed 30 times or when the button is released. Overload Driver is an S rank gear that changes Corrin's EX special attack so that it now gathers enemies together while dealing additional physical damage too. Blasting Blowers is an S rank gear that affects Corrin's basic and dash attacks alongside her dodge counters and quick assists. With it, it will now allow her to hit the 4th part of her basic attack earlier and unleash a new high speed attack towards enemies. Now moving on to Astra's, hers are probably the funniest, with Radiant Moment being an S rank gear that affects her energy. While this is active, she is then given the ability to shoot an energy beam. The duration of this attack is dependent on Starlight stacks, of which is a new resource that she gains whenever she consumes 25 energy, but as we move to the next gear, this is known as Hollow Symphony. This new addition affects her tremolo damage, and similar to Radiant Moment, it deals with the new Starlight resource that she gains, of which she will again be given once she consumes energy. Now, unlike with with Radiant Moment, instead of allowing her to use a beam, this will now increase the damage dealt by Tremolo instead. Now for Harmonic Echo, this is her final gear that increases the crit rate and converts excess crit rate beyond 100% to crit damage. Additionally, when the active character uses their EX special attack on an enemy, Astra will then restore energy and launch an additional Tremolo attack too. Now let's talk about the new boss, Geppetto. Regarding their mechanics, I do have a bit of a disclaimer. To be clear, some of the mechanics and their trigger conditions are kind of unknown, as different difficulties have shown that there are different mechanics or triggers for certain attacks, so it's difficult for me to pin exactly when each thing happens. That said, here's a general assessment of Geppetto and what exactly they can perform. In combat, Geppetto unleashes large area attacks using both its body and ether energy in the form of tail slams, lasers, and charge attacks. After its hands and tail are damaged enough by heavy attacks / general damage though, they'll also become destroyed, leaving Geppetto unmoving. Geppetto will then repair these destroyed parts when doing one of two major mechanics, either summoning ether enemies onto the field or deploying Curtain of Phantoms. While summoning ether enemies by itself should be easy enough to understand, Curtain of Phantoms is a mechanic that I'd like to break down a bit more. When Geppetto reaches a certain HP threshold, he can choose to disappear from the stage and perform a maze-like wall dodging minigame. To complete the minigame, you have to survive for as long as Geppetto is off field. If you get hit by the projectiles casted during this phase, or hit one of Geppetto's curtains, you'll be slowed and unable to perform skills. Aside from these few mechanics though, this is honestly a very straightforward minigame designed for you just to dodge and survive for as long as possible. Now to give you a more simple guide / recommendations, if your goal is to beat this boss, here's what you could focus on or look to do. First, use an agile character with a good dodge counter like Miyabi or Jane. Second, you can take shielding characters like Caesar, Seth, or Ben if you're desperate to avoid taking damage. And third, you can use supports that have heals like Astra, or take a support that is quite fast like Rina if you decide to sprint with her. Now in addition to these tips, however, you should know that using characters with fast animations or long invincibility frames can be amazing too. But let's not forget about the Bang Boos, of which Avocado Boo and Snap can both perform very well too. Side note, there are Resonium / upgrades in the Lost Void that you can also take with positive effects that make clearing much easier as well. With this, my recommendation for the Resoniums is therefore to take the extra dodge Resonium alongside the increased vital view duration, assuming you're struggling to avoid getting hit. Finally, when it comes to investigation strategy, you'll likely notice that some choices here are geared towards ambi and attack-based agents, but there are also general choices like defense strategy that can provide shielding too. Overall, all choices in here especially are viable depending on your team, but of course this is dependent on your goal and how you choose to approach this content. Now, all this content aside, there is one final very important thing to discuss, and that's the increase to rewards, through which investigation progress has now been increased from level 80 to 120. Now to summarize exactly what you get, if you do end up reaching 120, you will gain an additional 8 skip tickets / Victoria housekeeping coupons, and these are what you can use to quickly gain gear from specific disc drive fights. Moving along, you'll also be given 16 Boopons, 400,000 Dennies, 640 Polychromes, 36 Hi-Fi Master copies, 16 Boopon Ascension materials, and a new name card alongside a new avatar. Now in addition to this, assuming that you cleared difficulty level 6 of the new Hollow Zero, you'll be granted 5,000 Dennies, 24 to 27 Bang Boost system widgets, 4,500 Shadow Crystal data, which is just the investigation progress EXP, 650 Shadow Crystals, which allows you to upgrade agents, and 100 modeled ether particles, which is also used to unlock gear for the purposes of Hollow Zero. Now, while these are the per clear rewards, you are also given 480 Polychromes, 42 Hi-Fi Master copies, 8 ether plating agents, and 1 tuning calibrator, assuming that you clear the max difficulty of this new content. That said, this is only a one-time reward. Overall, guys, the new Hollow Zero content is pretty exciting and pretty fun to clear, but as always, this is the sort of content that you won't want to miss, as the rewards are definitely helpful, especially if you're trying to pull for future characters. That's going to be it for today's video. Hopefully you learned something or gained something from today's video. As always, feel free to check out the rest of my content. Like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. And as always, guys, check out the rest of my socials if you want to see any content related to Zenless or anything related to me. I'll see you all in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.